Wrestling Show, NorthJerseySports.com's original multimedia series talking all things wrestling across North Jersey. This is Season 8, Episode 8, and we are through the state tournament team-wise wrestling. We're going to turn our attention to the districts this week. I am Corey Doviak, being joined by a shortened but still illustrious panel of North Jersey wrestling insiders, starting with the original co-host on this show, who has been on hiatus and has been sorely missed in this context over the past couple of weeks. Kenny Sarajian, how do you explain your absence?
Don't worry about my absence. I'm here, and I'm excited because even though we got other guys who are banged up and sick, it gives time for me and you to talk to Donnie. And the beauty of Donnie Spataro is there's no more knowledgeable person in North Jersey, or maybe even the state wrestling, than Donnie. And I got a lot of interesting questions for Donnie, and the fans are going to learn a lot tonight. So I'm excited.
Are you going to let me introduce him?
Yeah, go ahead.
And now, you made me laugh, Kenny, sorry. The Pope of Bergen County Wrestling. He is the great one, the Bergen Catholic assistant coach, Dominic Spataro. Donnie, how you doing, pal?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Well, it is great to hear from you because we got to talk about this dynasty, and that's the only way to term it. Bergen Catholic, 7 straight non-public A state championships, and you guys finish once again as the number 1 team in the state. Not too bad, not too shabby, Donnie.
It's guys, it's been an incredible run. Yes, this was our 7th straight group championship, I think 12th overall in Bergen Catholic's history, 5th year in a row. We've been number 1 team in the state, and it's just been a tremendous run so far, and hopefully we can just keep moving along doing the same thing that we've been doing.
Kenny, remember when Donnie used to say, don't worry, it's just a cycle?
Nah.
It's like it's a tandem bike at this point, Donnie.
I'm speechless at times when I think about it. I mean, this season's just been magical. It's a great group of kids, and every time they rise to the occasion when you need them to. They're professionals. You see these kids, they're teenagers, and you don't have to give them any rah-rah speeches or anything, and they go out and they take care of business.
Yeah, it really.
You know what, Donnie?
Well, Kenny, I just want to say, before we get into this, we're going to get into it further. I just want to say, on the show tonight, we're going to take a quick look back at the state team tournament, which we're going to do with Donnie. We're going to talk to you about Pascack Valley, their historic run to a state sectional title for the first time in school history. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to have a guest tonight, Westwood head coach Paul Castellini, whose team made a great run in North 1 Group 2, all the way to the semifinals, where they lost to eventual Group 2 state champion High Point. So that's coming up shortly, but let's get back. You take it where you want to go with the great Donnie Spataro.
First let me say the nice things before I ask Donnie questions. I mean, one thing you notice about this BC team is not only their depth, which Dave talked about, and their professionalism, as Donnie says. First of all, they're a bright bunch of kids. If you look at where these kids, you really got to commend this program, and you got to commend the school. I know some of our fans want to be down on parochials, and they can go scratch things, but you look at these kids and look at where these kids are getting offers to go to college: Stanford, UPenn, Cornell. I mean, the top echelon of educational institutions. So they're smart kids. They're mature kids. And they handle themselves well, and everybody knows their role, and everybody does their role. So that's the compliment. And Donnie has said it for 8 years on this show. And I think this also applies to Westwood and Pascack Valley, that champions are made in the summer. And these are the kids who are doing the workouts, A lot of them, there's no secret. A lot of them belong to Iron Horse, but they're all doing something, and they're working at their craft and getting better and working hard. And you know what? All the teams we're going to talk about tonight, these kids have earned it. Yep. So I know people say I start going too long, so I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask Donnie, tell us, in this last run, I mean, obviously nothing was in question, but you did have some exciting bouts in the Del Barton one. You want to tell us something about that, Donnie?
Yeah, I mean, I know you may not believe me, but that match, like I told Dave Bell, it was bothering me. It was, I knew that they could possibly win anywhere from, just say 4 to 6, 4 to 7 matches, and it could go either way. There was a lot of close matches. There was the 106 match that ended in a actually like a neutral type position pin. Can't even call it it was basically defensive, but both the wrestlers were, no takedown was given, and they called basically a defensive pin, which is rare. And there was one match that went into overtime, another match that was won by 1 point. So, it was a really great match. Del Barton is a great team, another good team. They wrestle on national schedule also. A lot of their kids, I mean, they got Patrick Glory ranked #1 in the nation. They have a returning state champ, Anthony Clark. I mean, the list goes on. They got a bunch of state place winners, 2 state champs on their team. So, it was not going to be a walk in the park. We had to go to their gym, and they weren't going to, give it to us without really working hard. So it was a great match. It was the #1 team in the state versus the #2 team in the state, and the match, gave the fans their money worth.
What
it was a good match.
What was the atmosphere like? Big bad Bergen Catholic coming to town.
Yeah, Del Barton had a large crowd there. BC had a crowd, and whenever Del Barton pulled an upset, the place went nuts. So it was a good atmosphere.
Yep, Kenny, you said a lot of nice things about Donnie and his team. I guess it's my turn to do the same thing. And the thing that impresses me most is, they've gone all over the country all year. There's been, and this goes for every team. At this time of the year, everybody's banged up. Kids are sick. I saw somewhere that one of the teams down in the state finals barely even got to compete because an illness went through. But when you think about what Bergen Catholic has gone through this season, I mean, wrestling a national schedule sounds, luxurious, and we kid Donnie about having the private jet and all that stuff, but that's not really the way it works. It's, long travel. It's hotel rooms. It's all of those things, to go out to the Doc Buchanan, to do so well at the Doc Buchanan, to win the team title at the Doc Buchanan. And like you said, Kenny, these are, young kids who could walk out of there saying, hey, I just won the Doc Buchanan. It's a national prestigious tournament. I'm the best, and not so much that it would show up on the mat, but it would show up in the wrestling room where egos could become a problem or those type of things, infighting. It hasn't happened in the time that we've been covering Bergen Catholic so intimately with Donnie on this show every week. It didn't happen again this year. And Donnie, I think that's a credit to you, to your kids, and to Dave Bell for not only getting the right, talent as far as what you're trying to do, but also the right temperament of this team too. And that's probably the most impressive part.
Well, I'll tell you what, I spoke to Kenny during the week, and the thing that makes me, obviously the wrestling, how well they wrestle is great, but just to have people come up to you randomly that you don't even know and say, are you one of the coaches? Yes. Well, I just want to commend you on your team. Your kids are a class act. You guys are a class act, so on. I mean, wherever we go, it's been nice. We've had people come up and tell us that everywhere. Even last year in the regions, one of the workers at the region came up to me and said, are you a coach here? And I just want to tell you what gentlemen your boys have been this weekend, and so on. So it's nice to hear. Doc Buchanan, everyone came up, said the same thing. So we get this over and over where we go, and we tell the kids, all eyes are on you. Everyone's watching you. Win or lose, you're going to be judged on how you either win or even how you lose. So, kids are watching you. Everyone's watching you out there. All eyes are on you. So take that in consideration, and you're representing the school. You're representing yourself. You're representing the program and the school. Now, wherever we go, whatever state we're in, wherever we travel to. So that's always on their mind, and the kids pull through. It's just a great group of kids.
And the greatest honor of all is that you finished the dual meet season as the number 1 team in the NorthJerseySports.com National High School Wrestling Ranking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, Kenny, where do you want to go from here? Should we talk some PV?
Yeah, let's talk about PV a little.
All right, so I'll interview you now, because our guy, Tommy Gallione, see, here's another part of it, too. It's a historic season for the Pascack Valley Indians, first ever state sectional championship. They won North 1, Group 1, and not only did they win it, I mean, they went on the road to the number 1 seed, and I'll say it, they whacked Sparta. I mean, not even close. Won the first ever sectional championship in school history in style, and for all of his efforts and all of the history making and the glamorous life of a high school wrestling coach, Tommy Gallione can't be with us tonight because one of his kids is sick and he's trying to put a crying baby down. So, Kenny, you will have to stand in for him. You are a longtime fixture at the Institute of Higher Learning over there in Hillsdale. What is the mood around the school, and what do you want to say about a historic season by the Pascack Valley Indians?
You know what? I want to talk about what a great bunch of kids this is, and I want to talk about how they are the epitome of a team. And I said it to the kids, and because of illness or whatever, I haven't been around them as much as I wanted to be. But I said there's an old phrase: team together, each accomplishes more. And these kids went out there, and they, first of all, I think Donnie will always agree with me. The one thing you want on every team, besides, everybody wants studs, but you want senior leadership. And we have a great bunch of senior leaders who put the team above themselves. A kid like Casey Lewis and Jake Prusha and Will Morris and Robbie Natelli and George Zavonis. And we got this kid, George Zavonis, that I call Clark Kent. He wears glasses. He's, my body's almost better than his. And everybody laughs at him when the other team sees him. And he goes out the other night, and we start with a pin from Casey, which was his 100th win, and then George, and then it just started rolling. And these kids, we wrestled Paramus tough, we wrestled Montville tough, and they went to Sparta, and these kids, everybody just gave everything they had. And we have Matty Byer and Tommy Cellini that are super juniors. We have a couple great freshmen, Tyler Pizzi and Luke Patasha. We have the maturity of a kid like Steven Soravillo, who he's just one tough son of a gun. And we got a kid named Zach Olson, and I'm going to forget some kids, and I apologize. But Zach Olson is a kid who he's committed to St. John's on a lacrosse scholarship.
Wow.
But he came out for the team because we needed a kid. And he had wrestling in his background, and he's done a hell of a job for us. And that's what Tommy's built with this team. This is a team. They wrestle as a team, they win as a team, and they've lost as a team. And that's what I'm most proud about them. And we've had our coaching staff, Tommy is doing a hell of a job. Gary Byer, who's an old PV wrestler, wrestled at Franklin Marshall College, was a head coach in one of our last glory eras. And also Frank Cagnino, 3-time state champ, 2-time national champ, has joined our staff. And they just all work together, and I just have the joy of watching it. So, and our fans, one last thing, and then I'll get off of us. Nope. Our fans, these people traveled all the way to Sparta, and they were classy. Our kids, they made that gym a home gym for us. And we had 7 rows deep in the stands, and when they came back, they came to the school and waited for our bus to come back just to cheer their friends on. So it's been exciting, between our girls basketball team and their success, our bowling team and their success, and our wrestling team and their success. It's been a great winter for Pascack Valley, and I'm just pleased as I can be for the PV wrestling staff and all those kids.
Donnie, did he just say bowling team?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just well said, Kenny. And even all that, you said it eloquently, and it really, congratulations to PV. But, you went up to Sparta. You had lost to them last year, knocked you out of the state sectional tournament. And I'm sure that, Tommy had his kids raring to go and, we can do it and everything else. But still, there had to be some sense of shock, disbelief, wonderment at just how, lopsided the final score was.
Well, Donnie will tell you, we all sit down and we look at the numbers, and Tommy and I looked at the numbers that day, and we knew we could win.
Right.
But if you had told me 50-18, I would have told you you're nuts.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You get on that roll if you get the right matchups, if you get the right coin toss so that people can't move away from you. It can happen, right, Donnie?
You don't have to tell him. He's done it for 7 straight years, Kenny. And he's number one.
Like we always talk about matchups. I mean, how do you wrestle a team that you just beat by 10? Another team beat them by 40. You're trying to compare it, and then you're wrestling a team that beat them by 40, and then you in turn beat them by 30. So it really doesn't make sense. Wrestling's all about matchups.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people that that don't follow the sport truly to understand that. They'll see something and they'll go, "How did this happen?" And they just don't realize that wrestling's a totally different sport than others when it comes down to these type of competitions.
Yep, I just put on my to-do list for season 9 next year to learn something about wrestling. Go ahead, Kenny.
and Donnie will tell you, we've both been involved in matches that have been won or lost on the coin toss.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yep. No, it really does. All right, boys. Well, let's bring in our first guest of the evening here on this edition of the Wrestling Show as we welcome in a man that we are going to rename here tonight. Now, Mike Atanasio, usually a member of this panel, has decided to take this week off, so he loses his title. We welcome in the newly minted Cardinal of Bergen County Wrestling. He is the head coach of the Westwood Cardinals. He is Paul Castellini. Paul, thanks for joining us here on the Wrestling Show.
Those are big shoes to fill. I don't know if I can fill in for Coach At like that, but glad to be here, fellas.
I think you've done a bang-up job already, just with what you've said. I mean, that's it. But first of all, we have to congratulate you on a great run on the team side this year. Finished up 19-6, North 1 Group 2 state sectional semifinalist, lost to eventual champion High Point. I mean, we'll talk about your district in a minute here, but let's rewind, go back to this team run that you guys were on, and really, reestablish Westwood as a Bergen County heavyweight.
Yeah, we had a nice season. We beat Kittatinny twice, which was great for our program, beating a state power like that, and ran into the buzzsaw that was High Point. They were just a team on a mission this year. They were a complete team. We went up there for a second time, and we wrestled tough. I think we only got pinned in one matchup there, but they just won the close ones and then beat us up a little bit. But we'll see them in district, so hopefully we'll see some of those guys again.
Yeah, and we all kidding aside, when we were talking to Mike Ad about that first Kittatinny matchup, the one during the regular season, there was some, I don't know what the term is, bad blood, I guess, and some controversial calls, at least from their perspective. And then Coach Gill, he's been around forever at Kittatinny. He had his kids wired to come back and everything else and wrestle you guys again. So to beat him twice is really a huge accomplishment.
Oh, for sure. It was, part of the reason for that first one was we don't want to take the hour and a half ride up to Kittatinny and sit on the bus for that ride. It's not a comfortable thing to be on a bus for 90 minutes before you go and wrestle. So any advantage you can get and make them come to Bergen County one more time, and the boys stepped it up that night and wrestled really well to try to earn that trip to High Point.
Yeah. You had to make the Sussex County trip eventually, but better to delay it. That's for sure. And, just like
for sure.
Yeah, just like Bergen County kids driving out through the cornfields, you got those Sussex County kids driving and going, traffic, malls, all this. Maybe they get a little intimidated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Kenny, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I want to, as Corey said, drill back a little and talk about. It's not just this year, Paul. This is something you've been building for the last couple of years now, and now you're reaching the pinnacle. Why don't you talk about some of the keys to? And we've got programs we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk about Pascack Valley a little. You guys have all built to this point. You've had a good rivalry with us. What's the key factors you think in getting Westwood to this point? Competing at the state level for these titles.
I think this is, for sure. I think this is one of the deepest teams we've had. I think we had 33 kids on the program, which is the most we've had in the program as long as I've been coaching. And Mike couldn't remember a time when he had that many kids. So numbers are up, which just breeds competition in the room, which it pushes these guys a little bit more. When you have just enough kids to fill a lineup, there's nobody pushing them from behind. There's almost that complacency that builds in. But when you have a lot of depth, a lot of guys pushing each other, a lot of guys working with each other, the competition breeds in the room. Sometimes you got to pull a couple guys apart because they're going so hard. They just, they want to be better.
Yeah. Donnie, do you want to invite Paul for a home and home next year against Bergen Catholic? I mean, it sounds like the Cardinals are on their way up.
Oh boy!
I was going to let that silence linger for as long as you let it.
Anyone has an open invite. Anyone would wishes to wrestle us, just give us a call. We're open to any opportunity.
Yes, go ahead, Kenny.
Paul, I got a question. If I asked you who are the leaders on your team right now, who are you going to tell me? Who are we going to highlight?
The first name I would say would be Zach Harris, senior 132-pounder. As a freshman, I think he had 12 wins, something like that, and just a kid who has led by example and worked his tail off for 4 years to, he took fourth in the county this year. He's 28-5, somewhere around there, 29-5, and we're hoping he has a nice run coming up here in the postseason. He's just one of those guys that just puts his head down and works, doesn't ever say anything, but just does whatever he asks of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Who else?
Trent Furman, right? Furman won the county title.
For sure.
And Benny Dada, just because I like to say the name. Sorry.
Yeah, both of those two guys. It's nice to have somebody down below like Trent who you can count on for a win just about any match that you go into, and to have a hammer up top like Benny where you can count on a guy like that to get a win to close the match out if you need it.
Yep. Yeah, so that has to breed a lot of confidence. I mean, this great run that you guys have been on all season, I'm sure camaraderie is high and everything else. And now, Donnie always says it's part 3 of the season begins now. It's the districts. It's kind of every man for himself, but, still a team atmosphere. Just talk about the mindset. Does anything change in the room? Do you do anything different? How do you switch gears now going forward to try to make the push to Atlantic City?
No, I mean, you don't really do too much. You're not making a state champ in this last week or so of practice or anything. You've hopefully laid the foundation before this time. Now it's just about maintaining, fine-tuning, and getting the boys ready for that run.
Yep. What's best case scenario?
Let me ask you a question, Paul. I got a question for you. We talk about fine-tuning, and you guys were in the States this year. And a lot has been written, and actually, you guys have been proponents of these great dual meets. And a college coach a couple of weeks ago even said about New Jersey, he doesn't get it about the quads. And, I mean, if you weren't in the States, I mean, you had how many matches on Saturday?
We had 2 on Saturday. We had and Delaware Valley.
And you won them both. Do you feel like we want to start dialing back on these quads and keep them to tries and duels, or are you still a proponent of the quads?
You know what? It's I go back and forth with it all the time. You know, it's almost you're doing the quads to keep up with the Benjamins because you need to earn as many prestige points and caliber points to the end of the year for the districts that if you don't wrestle enough times that you know there's just going to be another kid who has more points because they've been on the mat more than you. You know, but there's something to be said about, you know, a Friday night, Saturday night spotlight match where it's two teams mano-y-mano and you know, there's a little bit more juice to the rivalry.
Could there be anything more exciting than that Valley Westwood match 2 weeks ago?
No, that was a great wrestling environment. You know, packed gym, both teams going at it hard. That's what you want high school wrestling to be all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes too with, you know, with dwindling numbers the past couple of years. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's changing. I mean, you know, I feel like there's more participation. I feel like there's more better teams. You know, we've been doing this show for 8 years here, and we've never had a problem like we did last week where we couldn't have a show because everybody was involved in the state tournament, you know? So, you know, PV being good again, Westwood being good again, North Bergen being good again, or as usual, whatever. So maybe it's just in our little cloistered world here on the wrestling show, but I feel like, you know, we had the West Orange head coach on, and it feels like there's a little bit more juice, and maybe, you know, quads were necessary to, you know, get good teams in the same place. But maybe now you can find some dual meets that will have, you know, that hyper-local interest like Westwood Pascack Valley did. I mean, is that fair to say?
Absolutely fair to say. You know, it's when I was making my schedule, I had Shane DeLuca and I with Fairlawn. We were looking for, you know, somebody else. We couldn't find anything. We were both kind of up the match limits. We were ready to do a Saturday night spotlight match with us in Fairlawn, and then Emerson Kidd were looking for somebody else to join a quad. And I said to Shane, I was like, we kind of have to do this, you know, like it's too good of an opportunity to pass up to not, you know, to have Kidd come to Bergen County for us, you know. So it kind of changed our script with how our schedule was going, and that weekend I think was a big turning point for us because we had Valley the night before on Friday and that Hammer quad on Saturday that just, you know, got us ready for that postseason push.
Yeah, but even that being a part of the conversation, I think, is progress. Right, Kenny?
Absolutely.
All right. Let me ask Paul now. Let's talk about the district. Let's look at our district, which is District 1. It's going to be Saturday at Pascack Valley. Tell me, from your perspective, who are the teams that are going to be tussling for the title?
I mean, High Point just won the overall Group 2 title, so I mean, to say they're the team to beat would be an understatement.
Right. Mm-hmm. I understand Johnny Gardner ordered a brand new flannel after that victory in the state final, and he will unveil it on Saturday at Pascack Valley High School.
All right, baby. So what about?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kenny.
What other teams are going to be vying then for second or third?
I think Newton is another very good Sussex County team who lost in their semifinals 30-28 to Jefferson, who's got a lot of quality wrestlers. And I think Westwood and Pascack Valley will be right there in the conversation too.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. What weight class do you see as the deepest?
You know, without anyone jockeying or moving, I think right now in our district, 126 is probably one of the deepest.
Absolutely. You got
Trent Furman will be one of the top seeds, and you've got Maverick Liebel from High Point, who just gave Trent a 1-point match last week. You've got Gianni Manginelli, who's wrestled Furman close twice. You've got Robbie Natelli and the kid Rosa from Newton. Who'll be the 4-5, who I think are both 25-win kids. So you have 5 kids in that weight class. 5 kids in that weight class who have 25+ wins, probably.
So the regions are going to move on without a couple of good wrestlers.
Absolutely.
Best case scenario for you, Paul. How many guys you see? Well, I don't even know if you want to answer this question, but you got a number of guys you'd like to see get through into the next weekend?
We just want to try and get as many guys advancing to regions as possible. There's, you know, no number that I have set. Just get good seeds, wrestle well. You know, that's what I want to see is them wrestling at their peak. You know, we've been working all season for team sectionals and districts right around this time. So that's, you know, we're hoping everyone's healthy, everyone's peaking at that right point, wrestling the best wrestling they've been all year, and hope the chips fall where they are and we get a lot of guys going forward.
That's why you're the head coach, not that Atanasio guy. That is the way to answer a question without answering a question. Kenny, anything else?
No, I'm good. I'm going to see him Thursday night and then all day Saturday.
Donnie, would you like to chime in with a quick question for the newly minted Cardinal of Bergen County Wrestling?
No, I'm good, man. Kenny took care of everything. stole all my thunder as usual, but we're good.
Donnie, I'm going to be interviewing you.
Yeah. It's great to have Kenny back in the mix after a 2-week hiatus. And, Paul, we appreciate you jumping on with us here. And we will hear all about your exploits this weekend because we have guys all over the gym at Pascack Valley. So keep it clean.
Eyes and ears everywhere.
No doubt about it. Thanks for coming on, and we appreciate a couple minutes with you tonight. All right, great stuff there with Westwood head coach Paul Castellini. Kenny, the floor is yours now as we move on here. We're going to talk some district stuff, and that means asking Donnie some questions because he is the guru, the pope of Bergen County Wrestling.
Well, he and I will play around with this a little. But, Donnie, just do me a favor, because it's not like the old days, and all the fathers in the audience think that the seating meetings are like the days when you and I were younger, and we'd have 3-hour seating meetings, and we'd be negotiating, and coaches would be screwing other kids just to get their kid a better seat. Why don't you explain to people how the seating goes now? And our seating meetings are an hour.
I'll tell you, seating meetings are like 15, 20 minutes now, some of them.
Yeah.
So years ago, instead of where people just voted on who should be the top seed and trying to outmaneuver another coach, basically it is just done for the districts. It's totally different type of seeding criteria, method than the regions or states. So what happens is, again, we always talk about what you've done the previous year. So whatever you have accomplished the previous year, so let's say it's a state champ, you start the season awarded 100 prestige points. And then as you go on during the season, you score more points by who you wrestle, how you've beaten that person, and what their points are. And that's about the only way that you accumulate points. And the only way that you can jump someone in the district that has more points than you is if you beat them head-to-head. So, in all reality, a 2-time state champ can be, say, seeded second over a kid that maybe took 7th in their state, 7th in the state, if they don't have as many points. And it actually happened last year to us. So people just don't understand that. How can so-and-so be seeded second? It's just that he didn't have as many points. Maybe he didn't, wrestle as many kids during the season or wrestled out of state and so on. You can only score points by beating kids in state. That's where you're going to score, beating kids in New Jersey itself that have other prestige points. So that's it. What you do is you accumulate points along the way during your season. They add up the points at the end of the year in the computer, and whoever has the most points, it goes in order that way. And the only time that you can ever jump anyone is if you wrestle them head to head. And if you haven't, those points stay. What's that?
There's one other key point to add here. And you know what, Donnie, and you guys have been a proponent of it. One of the few benefits of the redistricting and the crazy districts we have now, and I'm an old timer, is we've expanded our wrestling geographically because, we have to go out to North Warren, we have to go to High Point or wherever to wrestle these teams. But also, the way kids can accumulate better points is if I wrestle a guy who finished second in the region, and I beat him, even if he's not in my region, that's a great way of earning points. So if I'm an unknown and my coach puts me out there and I can steal that guy's points, it's my best way to accumulate points because I didn't start with that many points. You agree with me, Donnie?
Correct. And also, believe it or not, you can actually score a decent amount of points by actually losing to somebody. So if you keep if you wrestle, say, a state champ who has, I'm just making up a point system, 100 points, and you were to lose to him by a decision or less, which is 7 points or less, you will receive 20% of his points. Of his prestige points. So it's an incentive for people not to duck. That's why they actually set up that type of system where instead of moving away from a good guy, there's an incentive, even if you take a loss, that you'll score a decent amount of points to help you out. And you should. I mean, if you wrestled a really close match with a state champ or a state place winner or a region champ, you should receive some type of points for doing that.
Yeah.
So that's another way that a lot of people don't know, is that you can actually take a loss and score points.
All right, let's take a stroll through some of these districts. Let's start in Region 1. And we talked about District 1 with Paul. The other district that I see as a competitive district, though maybe not deep, is District 3 with Don Bosco, Emerson Park Ridge, and Sparta. I mean, is it Emerson Park Ridge's depth going to do it? I mean, Don Bosco squeaked by him in the George Jockish Holiday Tournament. What do you think about the competition in that district, Donnie?
I mean, it's tight. I mean, Emerson brought 8 kids to the States last year out of that region. Don Bosco still has some heavy hitters. Everyone's waiting to see if this will be the return of Justin Beerduffel. He's been out. He's only wrestled a few matches this year. He injured he had an injury coming in, and he re-injured that. And is he going to show up at the districts? He's the state place winner. So, I mean, Bosco still has some heavy hitters. Emerson's got a bunch, good balanced team. The Mazzio brothers, Nick Babin ranked in the nation, and that's going to be like a slugfest. I mean, you could have a bunch of finalists where it's Bosco versus EPR, and throw in a couple other kids. I mean, you got Trevor Fleet, also from West Milford. He probably will be the top seed at 126. He went to states last year, so you got to sprinkle in other kids from the other teams also. You can't count out.
You got the heavyweight Demarest.
Correct.
Bailey Pastor.
Yep, that won the if I'm not mistaken, he won the BCCA tournament. Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just got his 100th win.
So you take the top 2 or 3 teams, and then you got to sprinkle in some of the studs from the other teams, the lesser known teams that are in there, and it's a very competitive district. It's one of I would say one of the more competitive districts around.
Yep.
Yeah, you got Surge from Mawa. I mean, you really got some nice competition there. All right, let's take a quick look at District 2 with Kittatinny, Pequannock, Jefferson, Highlands, and Highlands is coming up, but you got Pope John the 23rd. I mean, are we really looking at Pope John and Kittatinny in that one, Donnie?
Yeah, and then again, sprinkle on. Pope John's got some real heavy hitters. They won the top, 7-8 teams in the state this year. They won their group, and they got a bunch of kids returning that placed in states last year. I mean, they got their core of 5 to 7 kids on that team, and they were all state material, state medal medal winners, those type of kids. And I mean, Pope John's got to be a heavy favorite in that district with their team and the kids on that team.
All right, District 4, Riverdale, St. Joe's. I mean, I don't see anybody touching St. Joe's here just because they got the guys who are going to be the champs. I don't know that they have the depth they've had in the past. But, I mean, Lakeland, I don't see anybody in that one, Donnie. What do you think?
No, I mean, you got Sammy Alvarez returning for St. Joe's. He was a state second last year, made the state finals. They got I think they have enough firepower, St. Joe's, to win that district. And, there's, again, like we always say, sprinkling other kids from other teams, but I think St. Joe's will come out of that district winning.
All right, we go to your district. I mean...
You want me to break down Donnie's district, Kenny? I'm starting to feel like Ryan Burdett here. I have nothing to say. Donnie's district...
I can bring my daughter in to break down that district.
I'll tell you what, the one match everyone's going to be waiting to see in that district, will be Mike Folker versus O'Malley from Heights.
Right.
Second in the state versus third in the state.
Right.
So everyone's going to be waiting to see that final. Should be a really tough final.
Yeah, that didn't happen in the county tournament or the George Jockish Holiday tournament. So yeah, that will be a good one too. But Donnie, I mean, you talked about the seeding process a couple minutes ago, and in some ways your kids get the short end of it here because you didn't wrestle a lot of in-state competition. They don't have much in the way of criteria for that. So, you're going to have some kids seated lower than probably their talent might suggest.
Well, one thing that I skipped over, which I didn't count on, which could be used in certain circumstances, is a wild card. So say there was a state champ and he was injured most of the year and he doesn't have a lot of points, they can use that wild card to move that real good kid in the weight class up. Because you got to remember, if a kid should be the top seed and he's thrown down into the bottom bracket, either second or third seed, that is not helping the kids that either seeded second or third. Because let's be honest, a second and third have a better chance, one of them beating each other in the semifinals than say a kid that should be the number one seed.
Right.
So if a state champ gets thrown down on the bottom and he's the second seed, that's really hurting the third seed. The third seed, may not really have a chance of beating that state champ, but he would if the other, if it was properly seeded, if the other kid was in the semis with him. So you got to remember, not only is it really messes up the rest of the bracket for everybody. So
now that would come into play for like a beer dumpful, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, right?
Well,
correct.
They have to have placed or have a credible record from the year before, and things like that. Because the wild card's not an automatic; it's got to be granted. Correct, Donnie?
Say that again, Kenny. I'm sorry.
I can't just say I want the wild card for this kid. I got to have a case, and it's got to be granted. Correct?
Correct. And the tournament director has to agree. There's certain there's a set criteria that can be used for the wild card. So it's just not like, well, I feel my kid should be the first seed, and I feel he got screwed. Let's use a wild card. It doesn't work that way. So.
All right, the last district I want to go so we can close this out, because actually this might be, I don't know, in some ways other than District 3, the most competitive one, because there's several teams that have legit depth. Is District 6, where you have Paramus, Hackensack, and Fairlawn, with Pagoda Weehawken thrown in. I mean, what do you think about that one, Donnie?
There's going to be a lot of toss-ups in that district. I mean,
yeah,
that's again another competitive district. A lot of good teams in there, and they could be upsets left and right. But there's a lot of good competitive districts around the area this year. There may not be like a district with a bunch of state place winners per se, but you'll have a bunch of state qualifiers coming out of there. But very competitive, very competitive districts this year. So I mean, the reshuffling of the districts looks like it's panned out a lot.
Yeah.
For even though that's supposed to reshuffle every 2 years, next year is supposed to happen again. But it looks like it's serving its purpose right now.
Yeah, it's forced changes in the team schedule for the season. It has made it more competitive here at the end as we go for the individual stuff too. So we do ride the powers that be pretty hard when we perceive that things are going in the wrong way. But maybe you got to give them a tip of the hat in this situation, Kenny, huh?
I agree I think Donnie and I agree. The biggest benefit out of this, and I ripped them too, but the biggest benefit is, I think, and part of it's an offshoot of BC going to a national schedule, is it's broadened our geographic wrestling area. Guys are going around the state for either because their district and region are broader and they have to get those matches, or to find competition to get their kids points. I think that's the one benefit. I think we're all traveling a lot more, and it's good for wrestling. So I do see that as a plus. That's it for me.
I think it took a lot of coaches and teams out of their comfort zones. I mean, I'm not saying let's just reshuffle everything for the sake of reshuffling. I didn't like it myself, to tell you the truth, but this has definitely changed the landscape of wrestling and the way that coaches are thinking and scheduling matches now. So, it's, like I said, it's taken a lot of coaches that were in a comfort zone with like the same schedule they had every year, and now they really have to move things around, try to schedule teams for seeding purposes, point purposes, and so on. But again, next year we may see another big shakeup, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Kenny Sarajian, happy to have you back, my friend. How did it feel? I mean, you were away. Do you feel like you're home again here on the wrestling show?
I'm home again, but I'm tired.
All right, Kenny's going to bed. Donnie's going to break down the districts a little bit further. We will see you next week on the wrestling show.
Follow the leader.